What's going on, everyone? So just a really quick video here that I actually recorded the other day for an OG member, Bonnie, answering a question that she had about some of the features that Infusionsoft has labeled as legacy. So I wanted to share this video in case you've ever, seen legacy on one of the menus and wondered what that meant, or you've heard the term legacy thrown around as people are talking about Infusionsoft. So that's the goal here, is to just kind of explain what all that means and why it's called legacy. Let's dig in.
Let me just briefly give you the overview of the sections where you see legacy here. So there's one under marketing and there's one under e-commerce. And when you see legacy inside Infusionsoft, it pretty much means that that is functionality that has been replaced. So there is a newer way to accomplish the same thing. So in the e-commerce section, when you see legacy, it's largely talking about legacy order forms. And legacy order forms were in some ways more flexible, but they also were less secure. And so what Infusionsoft did was they built these new order forms, which just have a cleaner interface. They're easier to use. They're more reliable, but they don't have the exact same feature set. So that's why legacy is still there, is because some people are either still using it or, in many cases, have functionality that was built there and they don't want to lose access to it for troubleshooting or editing. Now, for some newer Infusionsoft accounts, I believe they've started turning that section off. So it's possible you may not even see that on your account. Now, with regards to marketing legacy, when you click on it, you're going to see this follow-up sequences section. But on this legacy drop down here, you'll see follow-up sequences, and web forms, right? And I think if I switch to my actual app, there may be a legacy campaigns section as well. But the reason that this is defined or labeled as legacy is because the campaign builder has effectively replaced both follow-up sequences and web forms. And I'm not seeing it on this menu, but like I said, I think it's in my other app. There's a legacy campaigns section, and legacy campaigns effectively were just web forms chained to follow-up sequences, and that's what Infusionsoft thought about as a campaign. So up until about 2012, this was how people would build their automation. They would design a web form and then build a follow-up sequence and define the steps of this follow-up sequence and kind of create all of the things that they wanted to have happen there. And then they would link the two together in terms of a campaign. So when the web form was submitted, the follow-up sequence would be triggered. And you could move people between follow-up sequences. You could add steps to it. You could build out your communication that way. But it was a kind of a vertical process that you worked kind of in a list in terms of adding your steps. So test, let's create and see what it looks like. So you would build down your sequence steps, send an email, right? And it would pop in here. This is the email I'm going to send. So save and go to sequence. And then you got your email. You can define the timing, right, as you add additional steps, send or add a note or apply a tag or run an action set, right? So the way that it created your automation was in a list like this, and it would be built vertically. So in March of 2012, they introduced the campaign builder, which has the graphic interface that we know and love. But at the point that they introduced it, it really only did emails and tags. It didn't have all of the other processes, opportunities and notes and action sets, right? It didn't have all of the other features that we've learned to rely on. So we had about a year where there were some people using the campaign builder because it was the new and shiny tool, but there were other people still depending on legacy because they it wasn't a one-to-one comparison. They hadn't made the campaign builder fully featured yet, so it wasn't easy to transition everything over because you had to compromise or sacrifice some of your automation to use the new interface. So anyway, fast forward to today, and the campaign builder is, I believe, the world's most powerful marketing tool for small businesses. It's just, terrific. It is not a complete identical replication of legacy, right? There were still some functions in the follow-up sequences and in the legacy forms that didn't get brought over to the campaign builder. But, it's only a handful of things, and most of them were not features that were heavily dependent on or used. So most people just use the campaign builder. The reason Legacy is still around is for the reasons I described. Some people are still choosing to use it. Some people have old stuff that they've built that is there, and Infusionsoft doesn't want to deprecate that. So as far as I know, it's still perfectly stable. It's still functioning just fine. But the best practice moving forward is definitely to rely on the campaign builder, just because it's where their development efforts are. They're improving things there. They're adding new features. They're fixing bugs. And it's easier for them to support, right? If you need to lean on Infusionsoft support for anything, I would say 95 or 98% of the questions probably pertain to the campaign builder. Very, very few pertain to Legacy, just because of the number of people that are using it and the frequency that they contact support. So hopefully that gives you a little clarity between the campaign builder and the Legacy section. You certainly could use both, but most people don't have a use for Legacy, especially if they are starting from scratch. So it's really just if you find yourself in an account that has things built in the Legacy section, that's when you would want to start to cultivate an understanding, so you can see how to troubleshoot it, or maybe how to migrate it over, or how to marry it to attach it to the campaigns in the campaign builder. So hopefully that helps explain some of the dynamic between the places where you see Legacy and the features that have been developed to replace that. Later.